Sorry, the board's a little bit. I'll get you guys your notes for today. So, this is actually the last group of notes we're going to do for this chapter, but we're going to do it over the course of 2 days. So we'll get this packet, we'll work through this packet over the next couple days, and then we'll review for a couple days, and then we will be testing on this chapter on Friday. So we'll be testing again this Friday, but again, we'll review here for a few days and still have a day or two notes. I'm sending one back for Izzy, if you could send it her way. So that means, guys, if you've been struggling on this, you should be stopping in for help if you need it. Again, with AR, just know that all you have to do is kind of schedule something ahead of time. So if you know you still want to retake our last test or something like that, you guys, send one more back. If you guys still want to retake our last test, you can do that. I'd like that to be done before Friday. I'd like that to be done before we take our next test. So if you guys want to stop in to AR today, that's fine. We have to just plan it ahead a little bit, just so they don't want you like going to your AR and then coming here. They just want you coming straight here, and I can always get a hold of your AR teacher. So let me know if that's something you guys end up wanting to do. I'd like to get, retakes done this week rather than having it go into that we have more than one test kind of out there. So kind of taking care of a retake before the next test. So test Friday, kind of plan on that. If you haven't looked at it already, there is a warm-up question. You guys want to try that? And if you didn't hear me before, we got to get lunch orders in. All right, so they want us to write the slope-intercept form for a line. Does anyone remember what that is? Slope-intercept form. A little bit different than the slope formula. I think I saw some people write slope formula. Slope-intercept form. Yeah. Yeah, yep. So y equals mx plus b. And hopefully once we say that, you're like, oh yeah, I know that. I just didn't know it was called that. The name of the formula kind of gives away what it is. The slope-intercept form, like that name, has the word slope in it and intercept. So that's kind of telling us that it gives us the slope and the y-intercept. So what do the different variables stand for? Like, what do all these different letters even mean? Hopefully one of them you know for sure from this chapter. What do you know about the different letters? The y, the m, the x, the b. Anyone remember what the different letters stand for? One of them you should know. We've just been talking about the last couple sections. Yeah, go ahead, Pete. Which one do you know?
M is slope, right?
M is slope, yep, we just talked about that last section, so hopefully you knew that M was slope. So the slope of the line is the M. Do you have another one, Will?
B is where it goes on the y-axis.
Yeah, we call that a y-intercept. It's the point on the y-axis. And so yeah, I like that he pointed out that's the point that we go on that y-axis. Now, when I teach this in algebra, the B doesn't really have a reason why B is the y-intercept. I had a teacher once say that B is where we begin the graph. So B for begin. And then M is how we move using rise over run. So the slope-intercept form tells us a whole lot about a graph. The slope and the y-intercept, I can definitely graph a line if I know the slope and the y-intercept. Kind of a weird question is, what do the x and y's stand for? It might be so obvious that you like to know it. What are the x and y's? We're talking about graphing. What would x and y be? Yeah.
The x-axis and y-axis.
It could be, not necessarily in that equation. Yep.
More points.
Yeah, they're just all the different points. So the x and y are just different coordinate points. Typically, we leave them as coordinate points because there's lots of x's and y's. There's not just a single x and a single y. There's a whole bunch of them. There's infinite points on the graph. On the line. So those points could be on the x and y axis, but not necessarily. So the x and y's are all the different points on the line. So all that information, we're going to use that today in what we're talking about in terms of writing equations. Mostly today we'll be writing equations. I think next class we'll be doing some graphing as well, or maybe we'll get into some of the notes for graphing. But writing the equations and kind of getting comfortable with that. Again, this is something you guys learn in algebra, but you probably took a whole 3 or 4 days to learn this in algebra. We're going to kind of try to fast track it into kind of 1 or 2 days here. So they want us to write the equation of the line that has the following information. And then we're going to graph it too, just because it's probably good practice to remind us how to graph. So they tell us the slope is -2 and the y-intercept is 7. Now, when they say the equation of the line, that means they want y equals mx plus b. So what do we know? If they told us the slope is -2, the y-intercept is 7, what do we know already? What letters do we know? About what Will and Peyton told us. Letters do we know? Yeah, Will?
That M is -2 and B is 7.
Yeah, they're giving us that information there. That M is -2 and B would be 7. So they're telling us M and B. So if I want to write that equation now, I have M and B. So I can put those values into the equation. I'm ready to write that equation. Because the x and y's are a lot of things. Like there's hundreds of x, or infinite x's and y's for this equation. So I'm going to write it as y equals, M is -2. So I'm going to put that in front of x, it's being multiplied by x, and then plus b, so plus 7. So it's that easy when I know both of those pieces of information. Obviously, it's not always that easy because they won't always tell you those two things. Now, remembering how to graph this. So thinking back to the fact that Will told us that B was where we go on the y-axis, and I said B is where we begin. So this is our y-axis, and so if B is 7, that means I'm going to begin on the y-axis at 7. So I'm going to put a dot on the y-axis at 7. we begin on the y-axis. And just like we did last class, we talked about this last time, now from that spot I can move using my slope. So the m is kind of how we move, and we're gonna make that rise over run. So if I have a -2, how do I make that a fraction? Because I want it to have 2 parts. What do I do with that -2 to make it a fraction? Yeah.
-2 over 1.
Yes, I can put it over 1. But we also want to be thinking about slope, dude. So negative slope is going to be going downhill, nice, negative. So this should be a downhill slope. So from this point, I should be thinking I should be headed downhill, so just so that I'm not going the wrong direction. It's important that it's downhill versus uphill. So -2 over 1. So I'm going to go down 2 and over 1, down 2 and over 1. And once you guys kind of like shake the rust off with this, or the dust, whatever is there, I think graphing is one of those things that once you know this is like that riding a bike thing, like, you know, like you'd never really quite forget, they say. And so this is the same idea as you kind of like, oh, I got, graphing's not bad if we know the slope and the y-intercept. Now it works really nicely when the slope is a nice value, like a nice fraction like that, the b is a nice value. That's not always the case. So if we look at the next example, this one's a little bit tricky. So we'll talk about this next one here. Is everyone good with this first one? And we're gonna do some whiteboards today just to practice this a little bit. And make sure you guys are remembering before I keep adding on. So let's do one more example and then we'll add some. All right, so this one goes through 5, -2, and it's a slope of 1/3. I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is not the most ideal of problems. It's going to be a little bit of a pain because we're going to find out that we're going to have like a decimal or a fraction in this case, other than just slope. So I know it goes through 5, -2, so I'm going to put a dot there. So again, this is similar to what we did last class, where they gave us like a point G, and we use that. And the slope is 1/3. So I'm actually going to graph it before I write the equation. We can write the equation here in a minute. A slope of 1/3. So that's rise over run. Now this one is positive. So this is going uphill, puff, puff, positive. It's a pretty gradual slope, so I should be aware 1/3 is a pretty small number. So I know it's going to be like a really gradual uphill, but still uphill. So I'm going to go up 1 and over 3, up 1 over 3. I'm going to run out of space, so what should I do instead? Bella's pointing. Down 1, back 3. Down 1, back 3. So here's our line. So to write this equation, I'm going to tell you guys right now, not the most ideal situation. What's the issue? Why is this not great? Why is this equation going to be kind of a pain to write? Does anyone see it? Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a nice whole number intersection on that y-axis. Remember, the b is the y-intercept. So where it crosses the y-axis. And if you graph this correctly, it shouldn't cross the y-axis of the whole value. So that makes this a little bit annoying. And this is probably not one you saw much in Algebra 1, because this is kind of the problems, like when you're first learning this, I'm kind of like, oh, we can skip the one that has kind of a bad y-intercept. We'll skip that for today. But now that we're moving into geometry, you guys are a little bit smarter, a little more savvy, we can do problems like this. So we have to figure out where that b is. Now, first of all, I can probably estimate a little bit. It looks like it's like a -3 point something. But my graph is not super precise. I'm assuming yours isn't like perfect. I mean, I can't tell 3 point what is that? I can't really tell that. So I'm gonna have to use some like algebra to get us there. So, remembering that the slope is our m. I don't know b. B is unknown. What do I know though? I know m. What else do I know? They give me other information. They give me 5, -2. What is that? That's our x and y. So they've given us an x and a y. They've given us one specific x and y. Now I actually have a whole bunch of them. I'm going to use the ones they gave me. It's 5, -2. Now if you look, this equation has 4 variables. I know 1, 2, 3 of them. So I can put those 3 variables in and figure out the b. Now again, I'm going to want my calculator, or unless you're really good with fractions, because I'm going to have to use a third, and it's going to be kind of a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. We kind of know that going into it. So in my equation, my y is -2. So I'm putting this into this equation. My m is 1/3. My x is 5, and then plus b. I don't know b. I'll warn you guys ahead of time. My b's end up looking like 6s all the time, so bless you. So just be careful. That's a b, not a 6. Are we okay with where everything is and why I put it there? Is that okay? All right, so at this point, this is telling me to multiply these two together. So 1/3 of 5. There is no nice way to take 1/3 of 5. It's either 5/3, or if you multiply that in your calculator, you get 1.6 repeating, right, I think? Yeah. So let's call it 1.7. Because again, it's gonna probably, a decimal probably makes sense for my b about where it's gonna be on my graph. So when I multiply those two, I rounded and called that 1.7. And I wanna get b alone. So I'm just gonna move this over to the other side. Seven is a -3.7. And if you look at our graph, that kind of makes sense. I said it was a little past -3. Looks like it's a little closer to -4. That seems reasonable, like long as we graphed it well. So now we're ready to write this equation. So I'm going to use my b and this m to write our new equation. Just recall that. Does that seem okay? Now, I left the x's and y's as variables. Because remember, we only chose one specific x and y, but for the whole equation, there's lots of x's and y's. So I want to leave those as variables. So we want to leave those kind of written the way they are. That way it works for all of these points. All right, questions? All right, why don't the middle 2 rows grab markers and whiteboard? I'm low on like Kleenex, if you guys want to share a rag if you're not wanting to use your hand. Sorry. I need to order some new erasers, but. All right, if this side of the room wants to go grab them. If you're gonna grab somebody else, that'd be great. Be a helpful friend. Do some practice with this. Oh. I feel like you guys are gonna end up getting the short end of the stick. This week's supposed to be gorgeous, but the mornings are always so cold, so I don't know. I feel like we can go sit in the grass and do these problems. My afternoon classes usually can. And then the last 2. Make sure you have a working marker. Draw a little Halloween scene or something. I don't know, spooky season. Basically what we're doing all these times is writing a linear equation. And it's just gonna depend what information I give you. Oh, I see a few ghosts out there, you guys shall draw a ghost. I'm in for it. When I first became a teacher, so like I think we figured out this is like our 19th year teaching. Mr. Donahue and I started teaching at the same time. My favorite professor in college said, don't ever give the students like something to play with and not let them play. So like the whiteboards were always something that you needed to like just color for a little while before you start actually doing the math. Like you can always do that. So I was always a doodler in school, so I understand. So we're gonna talk about writing a linear equation. I'm gonna give you guys different information. I'll start first where I give you the slope and the y-intercept. So hopefully this is easy-ish. All right, start easy. So write a linear equation with slope of 3 and y-intercept of 2. Yep. There shouldn't be much math to do. Yes. You're getting your calculator. Yes. You're doing something wrong. Yes.
That was so hard.
I was like, yes. Yep.
Um,
You flipped on M and B. Yeah. Well, I can get you a positive.
Me like
That's okay. Yep. Now, probably the most common mistake, which just sounds super silly to make it sound like it's like a bad thing. A lot of times students leave the x out. So they write y equals 3 plus 2. And I'm like, oh, that's not the same thing. I know that sounds really picky, but in mx plus b, so that m is 3, and then we do have to include that x. That x is super important. Because if you just have y equals 3 plus 2, I get this all the time when we take our chapter test, and I'm like, that is not the same thing as that. I hope you realize that. Y equals 3 plus 2 is y equals 5. Totally different scenario going on there. So this is not the same. So I will take off if you forget that x. I know it sounds picky, but hopefully you realize how different those two things are. Like mathematically, I can't be okay with it. It's not like forgetting like a period in a sentence. Like it's kind of a big deal here because it means two different things. All right. So slope and y-intercept. All right. Let's do one more. Slope of 1/3, y-intercept of negative 2/3. Yep. Yes. Yep. And you can have the plus and negative or just the negative, those are good. Good work. Don't forget your x. Yes. Big deal. Yes. Yep. Again, I know it seems annoying, the x thing, like don't forget it. All right, so now we're ready to do some that are a little bit more complicated. So this time you are gonna have to do some math. I'll stick with some nicer numbers right now so that you don't have to worry about, hopefully don't have to worry about calculators too much. I just wanna be able to grab, you guys are so fast that I wanna be able to okay. Now I'm not gonna give you both the slope and the y-intercept this time. So it's gonna go through let's do 2 - 7. So There's a slope of -1. So it goes through 2, -7, and has a slope of -1. So you're gonna have to find the b this time. So I'm not giving you b, so you're gonna have to find that. And then you have to rewrite that equation. Oh,
And I'm out because they use all
do you need a Band-Aid?
my. Yeah, it'll dry up.
Uh-oh.
I just scratched.
She's gonna bleed out.
I know.
Blood transfusion's gonna happen right here in the hallway.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so no, you're fine. Once you have that, then you have to rewrite it in the new equation. So once you find your b, then take that and put it back into the new equation. So I want the slope and the y-intercept back in there. So this is really similar to example 2. So multiply. Yeah, and then you'll move that over. So, yep, you're good. Yes. I think your B is wrong. Yes. You're good to go. Yes, yes. Yes. If you have some, so now once you have that, then you have to put that, though it has to be so. Yes. 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 There, tomorrow. Yes. Yes. So you're having, yeah. And yeah, guys, if I can see your work, it helps me to help you find your mistake. Oh, I can give them flip. The x and y. X is 2, y is -7. So let's see y there. One thing is I think it should be a negative. It is. It just wrote a positive. It's opposite day. Yes, you got it. Yes. Yes, so once you have that, you're going to take that with the slope and put it back together. Yeah, kind of putting it back together again. So now, oh yeah, you're good. Sorry, did I already see that? I apologize. Yeah. And then leave the x and y's as x and y. So like this and this, leave as an x and y. So that's your b, yep, and then you're going to put that back into the equation. Yep. So I'm going to work through it up here just because of my online students. So this is our m, this is our x and y, and putting those all together in our equation. I don't know b. So y is -7, m is -1, x is 2, and then plus b. Once I have that, it ends up being, I multiply, I get -2 plus b. I have to solve for b, so I add 2. So this is -5 is b. And now I know m and I know b, but I'm not done yet. I have to write the equation. So I have to write y equals -1x, and then plus a -5 or just -5. And you could have just made that -x as well. You could have plus a -5. There's lots of different ways to write it, but we have to make sure we rewrite it all the way through that way. Okay? Let's do another one like that to hopefully get your confidence up a little bit here. Try this one. So slope of -1/4, roll fraction, and it goes through 4, 2. I'll tell you guys right now, the number works out nice though. Should work out nicely. Hopefully, if you do your math correctly. Good work, Will. Very good. Good job. Good work. This is -1, but then you can move that over here. So you have to add it over. over it. Don't forget your X, it's only you're missing. Yeah, you're good. Remember that little X there. I know, it seems so picky. So, this is, oh, it's a -1/4, sorry. So that makes this a negative, so then it'll be opposite side. You're good. Yep. Yes. No, I'm guessing it's a sign thing, so check your B again. Guys, get this set up. I can't help you if you don't write anything down. So if you're not getting this, I need to see you writing something down so I can help you. Yes. Yep. So no. So can you put your stuff back together again? I don't know. No. Can you put it all in so I can see it? So put the X and Y in here. I'm guessing you're doing something. I think you're flipping the fraction. So if you put an X here, that's 4. You put the Y there, that's 2. 4. So you're taking 1/4 of 4, which I think you were multiplying them. So it'd be a -1, and then you're gonna move that. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm like, at first I couldn't figure out where you're getting the number from. So yes, and then you set this over to that side, so you have to undo it. So you're gonna add. This is the -1 here. So you're gonna add 1 to this. So you should be writing this down with your y equals mx plus b. So follow along as I'm writing up here. Take up you too. Make sure you guys write this down. Even if you, especially those of you guys who didn't get this, we have to make sure you guys are kind of getting this down. So the y equals mx plus b. This is x, this is y. Y is 2 equals. M is the slope. X, we're multiplying it times x, which is 4, plus b. Now, like I said, this is a good one because the slope and the times the x work out really nicely. 1/4 of 4 is just 1. Except it's a negative times a positive. So this is just going to be -1 plus b. So then in order to solve, I'm going to add 1. So I end up with b being 3. And then I can't forget to write that equation, but with the x in there, so don't forget the x as you go. All right? Let me try another one with fractions because of, I just want to make sure you guys got that. All right. Okay, fancier slope. Slope of 4/3, but it goes through 3, -1. And again, that should work out nicely. I'm just gonna give you that heads up as a warning. Goes through 4/3, or sorry, it goes through 3, -1, but the slope is 4/3. We should be setting that up. So putting your y in, your x and y, and your m. So putting all those values in. And then so that's your x and y. You're going to put that in for y equals mx plus b. So when you write out your equation, your y equals mx plus b, I don't need your calculator quite yet. Oh, I think you. I thought it was supposed to be. Hang on. Oh, your y is -1. Your y is negative. I'm like, I couldn't figure out what your math was wrong, so like everything looks good. To move this over, we're gonna have to subtract it because it's a positive. So you have to move this over here. So yes. Your so it's gonna stay like that. You have to move this over here. I think you went the other way to get that. Kate, you're good. Will, you're good. So now this is going to get multiplied by the 3, so you can put the 3 there. You can do that in your calculator. So Kansas, you're good. Yes, you're good. Yes. Yep. Careful, I think. Yeah, you're good. Yeah. And I know some of you guys don't love fractions, but realize that a lot of times I give you fractions that end up working in really nice numbers. So, okay, yep, you're almost there. Yep, you're done. So now once you have that, this is what you get here. So I'm gonna move that over to the other side. So then we'll subtract it over here. The only thing is this cancels. So that'll be 4. Then you can move it over to this side. Let me check. When you multiply those 2 and 3's cancel. I can use add around -1, -4. Okay guys, so let's look at it here. So the y, the x and y, the n. I'm making sure we're all good with this because we're about to make it tougher in a second here in our notes. I don't want you to get something that's tougher and then you're like, I didn't understand the easier stuff. So I know this isn't easy though on its own anyway. So the y is -1, the m is 4/3, the x is 3, plus b. Now I saw some of you guys putting your calculator, that's perfectly fine. I look at something like this, but I'm also a math teacher, so I know that this is not easy for everybody. The 3's can just cancel. So I gave you those numbers intentionally because I knew they'd work out really nicely. So I have -1, this just ends up being 4 over here plus b. Don't forget you're solving an equation. So I'm trying to get that b alone, so that's why I have to move the 4 this way. A bunch of you guys switched it and went the other way. So there's my b of -5. So I get y equals 4/3 x minus 5. Are we okay on that type, or do you want one more like that? What do you guys think? Anyone up for another one? Do we want another one like that, or are we okay? Another one?
Yeah.
One more, okay, we'll do one more. I mean, if no one else says anything, I'm just gonna go with the one person who answers my question. All right. So let's try. Again, I'm gonna do the same idea, and then, like I said, I'm gonna add to it, so it's gonna get a little bit trickier, and I don't want you guys to be lost on this kind before I move on. So a -1/2 slope, and it goes through 4 -1. So slope of -1/2, and it goes through 4 -1. Who are good? Speedy. And I feel like this is another thing. Once you get good at it, it's really like these are really doable problems. But if you're not, yeah. So once, you wrote it up there. Now we're changing everything around here. You're good. Good. Not quite. I think you might have subtracted something wrong. Your sign might have been wrong. Yep. Yes. 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 Yes, you're good now, Evelyn. Good work. Then the 4 is going to go here. That's going to multiply by. So you should be using that slope. I can get right there. And then the y is -1, so the -1 is going to go here. And you don't know b, so plus b. And so I'm going to combine that. So I'm going to take half of 4 with half of 2, but it's going to be a negative. So I have a -2 there. So -1 on the other side. And plus b. So I'm trying to get my b alone, so I'm going to move this over. There you go. So what's b going to be? got it, we. And down 1, up 2, what do you got? We really use 2 minus 1. Remove 1. And so once we know E and you know the slope, then you can put them back into the equation. Yes, don't forget your X. Thank you. Okay, guys, so in this case, here's our X, here's our Y. Y equals, the slope is a -1/2, X is 4 plus B. I'm putting everything where I know it's supposed to be. Half of 4 is just 2, but since the negative times the positive, it's going to be a -2. And to get that B alone, I'm going to add 2. So -1 and 2 is just 1, plus is our B, so we have our M and B. Don't forget that X, don't forget the negative. All right, why don't you just set your whiteboards aside? We'll probably do them one more time. So if you can just kind of move it aside when we go back to notes, so you don't have to put it all the way away. And like I said, we're not going to get all the way through the packet today, so don't look at this and be like, oh my God, she's going to keep talking for like the next 3 hours. No, obviously I'd love to talk about this for the next 3 hours, but we're going to just go through it's like 3 more examples. We'll probably do whiteboards once more here. So our next one tells us that we're going through 4, 9, and then -2, 0. Now I could graph this and figure out a few different things. I want to kind of go, let's pretend we don't have a graph right now. And if you wanted to graph it, it's fine. I don't know either the slope or the y-intercept. How could I find the slope? What's another way I could find the slope? Yeah, Peyton? It's that slope formula. So, yeah, that's okay. I know it's confusing. So slope-intercept form is the y equals mx plus b. The slope equation or whatever is the y minus y over x minus x. Now you could graph it and do that. I didn't necessarily want you to do that. That's fine if you did. But remember, we can still do slope this way. We did this the last couple days of class, where I can do 0 minus 9, and then -2 minus 4. So I get a -9 over -6. And I can simplify that to be what? It's going to be which is 2 negatives is actually going to be a positive. So positive 3 over 2. And I simplify that. So that's our slope. Now, had you graphed that on the graph paper, you could have seen that was the slope as well. But that's our slope. We also want to find our B. So if I know the M and I want to find B, how can I do that? Again, try to ignore we have a graph right now. Graphs maybe just for us to practice a little bit later. How can I find my B? Yeah, Peyton.
Use the formula.
Yeah, now use the one we just did. So which point do you guys prefer? 4, 9 or -2, 0? It doesn't matter. 4, 9. I like 4, 9 as well. I like to avoid negatives. Positive person. Stick with the negative, or stick with the positives. So 4, 9. That's my x and y. And our slope, I'm going to end up tripping myself here. Our slope is 3, 2. So just like we've been doing, we can put this into y equals mx plus b. But I'm going to use 4, 9 because that's what you guys said you wanted to use. You could use -2, 0 if you wanted. The 9 is our y. Our m we just figured out is 3 over 2. Our x is 4 plus b. Now again, if you need a calculator for 3 over 2 times 4, that's perfectly fine. I don't mind fractions, but again, I chose to be a math teacher as my job, so obviously fractions don't really scare me. It's really not that big of a deal, but if you're grabbing a calculator, perfectly fine. I believe it should be 6, right? 3 halves times 4. So I'm trying to figure out what b is still. And again, I picked those numbers because I knew they worked nicely, that's why, sometimes I try to make it happen that it works nice. So we can still figure out B. So I can move that 6 over. So 9 minus 6 is 3. This is gone. So our equation, we have our M, we have our B. So there would be our equation. Is that okay? We'll do another whiteboard problem. I'm just gonna throw this on the graph so we have it. Now we could graph this a bunch of different ways. We could just graph these 2 points and draw a line. We could use this M and B to graph a line. I'll start with the 2 points, so 4, 9. And -2, 0. I also know the slope is 3 over 2. I could use that. I mean, there's lots of different things you can do here. We actually aren't going to be doing any graphing for tonight's homework, as far as I recall. I think it's all writing equations, but I thought it wouldn't be bad for us to like try to remember some graphing. So let's grab our whiteboards one last time and do a few problems with the whiteboards. We could. I like finding some equations so that I don't have to make them up as I go here. Okay. Okay, let me get you guys a couple of points here. So it's going to go through 2, 5, and -2, -3. So I want you to find the slope, and then find the y-intercept, and then write that equation. So you have to first find the slope. So these are going to take a little bit longer. First find the slope like we just did, using that slope formula. You don't have graph paper handy in front of you. If you want me to check your slope before you move on, I can. And then once you find the slope, you want to find the y-intercept. Your slope is good, so yeah, now find the y-intercept. Your slope is good. Let's be -4. Slope is good. Once you find the slope, you have to simplify your slope. That'll help a lot. Simplify the slope. It's going to help. There's the slope. So good. I should probably check what the actual answer is. You got it? Yeah, you're good. Good job. Okay, so now you got the slope. Now you can find the b. You're good. You got the slope. Now you need to find the b. You're good, Michael. Yep, so put that x in as well. So put the 2 in there. Yes, you're good. Yes, you're good. Oh, Will, something happened. I think your slope is wrong. Your slope's straight. There must have been some multiplication error. Okay, so now, yeah, your slope is good. Now you have to find the b. So you have to multiply those together and solve for b. I used 5, 5 as a point. It should be 2, 5. Nope, so careful. This is x, this is y. let me come look. So when you put 2 times 2 here, you're good. 2 times 4, you subtract it. Oh, it should be a positive 2 is your slope. It's a negative or a negative. It should be a positive. Yeah. I think it should be a positive. 5 minus 4. Be positive, I think. Yes, you got it. Good work. Right? Yes, you're good. Yes, you're good. Only thing is, I think your slope should be positive. Negative, negative, so we have a positive. And then that'll change this into a, this would be positive, or then you subtract 4. 5 minus 4. All right, so follow along up here, you guys. Make sure you're getting this. So our M, lots of places to make mistakes. So negative 3 minus 5 over negative 2 minus 2. I get negative 8 over negative 4. 2 negatives become a positive. So my slope is automatically going to be positive, and 8 over 4 is just positive 2. Now, if you subtracted one thing wrong or put one number in the wrong spot, the slope is wrong, the B is wrong. It's kind of a it's just a big car accident here. Like everything keeps rolling together. So that's why some of you guys are checking your slope, and we fixed that right away. So that's our slope. Then we're going to pick one of these points to use as our B, or to find our B. So taking that point and putting into y equals mx plus b. Y is 5, m is 2, x is also 2, so 2 times 2 is 4, plus our b, so b ends up being 1. Once I have m and b, I have to put it back together again. So there's our equation. Okay, why don't you guys, if this is still a struggle for you, feel free to ask for help. Why don't we have this row go put boards away. If you want to put somebody else's board away, that would be great. We have 2 more quick examples to do. Next group in the middle there, just get some put your stuff away. And then our last group there. All right, you guys want to grab your notes. We'll finish up those last couple of examples there. So we're going to do the 2 more examples, and then if you flip and look at the homework is already separated as day 1 and day 2. So, so we're doing just the first day of homework. Now, if you're like some sort of phenom at this stuff and want to move ahead and you have time tonight, you're welcome to try, but we'll just stick with what we have. All right, so example 4 here. They want us to write the equation in a line, but they're giving us the graph this time. This is not so bad in this case because the graph is a really nice graph. Does anyone see what they can find on this graph that would be helpful for us? So for example 4, anything you notice on this graph? So Bella, what did you find right away? The slope. So she found the slope just by looking at the graph. Because the slope, she just did rise over run. She went down 2 over 5. So Bella found the slope. I saw that she wrote that right away. She looked at it. She knows she could find the slope of a graph, and so she did down 2 over 5. Yes? Yeah, the other thing that's really obvious on here, if you're looking for it, is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is on the y-axis, and so they're giving us the b. The b is 2. So I know M, I know B, this goes back to our very first example. I can just write that in the equation. I don't even have to do any math other than some counting. Y equals mx plus b. No need to grab a calculator, no need to multiply anything, we can just write that equation. Really great. Then that leads us into our next problem. Not as great, but not terrible. Everyone okay with what we got? We just pulled those things right off our graph. So, example 5. Last example here today. So what is easy to find on example 5?
Slope.
The slope. The slope shouldn't be bad. The slope, again, is right there for us. We can do rise over run. So I can go up 3 over, is that 7?
Yeah.
And is it positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive, up, positive. Up 3 over 7. The issue in this case is the fact that the b is not a nice number. Like I can tell it's right between two coordinates. Now I can estimate and say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 point something. But I want to be as exact as I can. I want to be specific. So if I know the slope, and you definitely need a calculator for this one because 3 over 7 is a horrible fraction. If I know the slope, how will I find that b? What can I do? Yeah, Peyton?
What we've been doing.
What's that?
With the points, you can find the x and y.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, it's the math, sorry, it's hard. So pick a point. Let's use this one over here. Negative 8, 2. We picked a point right off our graph. So we can use an x and y. Now, had you picked negative 1, 5, that would also work. This is my x and this is my y. They also gave us m. So this becomes one of those problems that we have to actually put it in and figure out the b. I'm gonna tell you guys a heads up, you're probably gonna need a calculator for this one. I probably would struggle to do this, to get a very exact answer without my calculator. 3/7 is not a nice fraction. So y is 2, m is 3/7, x is negative 8, so this is 3/7 times negative 8. Someone with a calculator help me out. It's negative 3.4. You guys agree with this rounding? Peyton agrees with himself, so that's all that matters. Negative 3.4. And then to figure out our b, we'd have to do what? How do we get b along? We have to do, you guys. Add negative 3.4, or add 3.4. And again, I kind of had an idea of what I thought the b was going to be anyhow. It's 5 point something. 2 and 3.4 is 5.4. So that makes sense. It's not like I got some, I didn't get 54 as my answer and be like, oh, that's good. No, I mean, it makes sense in this problem. So 3/7 x plus 5.4 would be our equation. So not quite as nice as the previous problem, but still doable. All right, questions there at all? So, homework, if you guys flip the page, we are doing part 1. So, we're doing this, so this is due Tuesday. And then tomorrow we'll do these notes, and that'll be due Wednesday. So, you guys are just doing part 1 for tomorrow. Okay? Questions? And I think the book should be uploaded and live. Anyone check already? Am I good?
Yeah, so.
Oh, okay. We have about 15 minutes or so, a little bit over. Faith and Jacob, I can open the room next door. I think Miss Miller probably wants to meet, or at least touch base with you guys.